Well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the WVU Center for Community Engagement, we're so glad you are joining us for this Academic Community Engagement, or ACE, event. The ACE Development Series aims to increase the breadth and quality of academic community engagement at WVU. Our intentions are that through presentation and discussion, attendees of the ACE series will learn how to get started or enhance what they are already doing and connect to a network of peers and resources. Today's presentation is called excuse me, is called Community Engagement and Economic Development. My name is Melissa Calabrese, and I'm the Academic Community Engagement Coordinator with the Center for Community Engagement. I'm here with other members of the Center for Community Engagement, and if they're here, they could turn on their screen. We have Mason Arbogast. He's our Civic and Volunteer Engagement Coordinator. I know Whitney Glatfelty is also present, our Assistant Director for Campus and Community Partnerships and our Community Partner Program. And Dennis Scott is also here. He is our Assistant Director for Academic Engagement, as well as a faculty member with Extension. If I missed anyone who's with the CCE, sorry, thank you so much for being here. To make our time together more intimate, you're invited, folks who are here today, to say hello in the chat right now and share what department or organization you're representing today. So we encourage you to use that chat. And speaking of time, we're here together for the next 50 minutes to share some best practices and ask questions about how we might be able to nurture inclusive and holistic ways of thinking, learning, and collaborating. I encourage you to engage in whatever way feels right to you, including turning on your camera and asking questions or using the chat, and or making use of the Zoom emojis. I always say I love using my heart emoji. Okay. This conversation is recorded, and it will be shared with registered participants, as well as it will be added to our ACE library on our website. Paris Winfrey is our moderator today. Hi, Paris, we're so glad that you're here. Paris Winfrey is the Assistant Director for the Ascend West Virginia. Paris grew up in Fairmont and attended West Virginia University as an undergraduate marketing student before moving to Thailand to work as a program coordinator for Outpour Movement, where he developed and delivered various educational and community-focused programs. His passion for adventure and his charismatic energy makes the perfect match for his role, where he guides his team and ascenders alike through all that West Virginia has to offer. Outside of work and occasionally during, you can find Paris rock climbing, hiking, and mountain biking. Paris, thank you for moderating our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. It's great to be here, and I'm super excited to introduce our panelists that are joining us today. We have with us Dr. Sarah Lyon Hill. She is joining us from Virginia Tech, and we're really excited to get to pick her brain a little bit. So Dr. Sarah Lyon Hill is the Associate Director for Research Development at the West Virginia Tech Center for Economic and Community Engagement. She specializes in crafting solutions for community and economic challenges by integrating community and industry input, university resources, and data-driven analysis across various disciplines. With a focus on strategic planning, organizational development, socioeconomic impact analysis, market and feasibility studies, and community cultural development, Sarah excels in understanding and articulating the social and economic impacts of organizations, initiatives, and technologies. With over a decade of experience in community and economic development, Sarah has worked nationally and internationally. Her work spans from her early days as a graduate student at the Center for Economic and Community Engagement to becoming the Economic Development Specialist in 2014. She is known for her dedication to research and her ability to engage with and care for those she serves. Sarah's international experience includes serving in Northwest Africa as a Peace Corps worker, where she led community groups and facilitated vision and strategy meetings that resulted in projects such as a community kindergarten, a region-wide birth certificate writing campaign, and a GOAT microfinance lending program across 5 women's groups. She holds a PhD in planning, governance, and globalization with a focus on arts-based community organizations' roles in community and economic development, and a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Virginia Tech, and a bachelor's degree in French and international relations from Beloit College. Sarah, it's great to have you today.
Thanks for having me here. I don't think I've ever read that out aloud, how long it is. I apologize.
No, it is great to give some incredible context to our conversation today. We also have joining us today on our panel, Daniel Eades from Extensions. Daniel Eades has significant experience in applied community-based economic research and has worked for the past 12 years as an associate professor and West Virginia University Extension Service Specialist in the areas of rural economic and rural development. He views community engagement scholarship as the heart of the Extension Service mission, an opportunity to share best practices and expertise from the university in ways that empower residents and build capacity, and an opportunity to learn from and with residents who are working daily to address the challenges impacting West Virginia's rural communities. Daniel's teaching and outreach activities engage government and community leaders in the process of data-driven economic development decision-making and support a breadth of community and economic development initiatives focused on local planning and placemaking. His research interests include rural and regional development economics, the community development process and community vitality, and community data analysis. Daniel grew up in Beckley, West Virginia. He received his bachelor's degree in environmental studies and natural resource management from Shepherd University and a master's in agricultural and regional economics from WVU. He is completing his doctorate in human and community development at West Virginia University. Before accepting his current position, he worked as a research associate at Clemson University's EDA University Center and Regional Economic Development Research Laboratory. Daniel, it's also great to have you today with us as well.
Thanks, Pierce.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to get into some of these questions. And to start, my first question for you all, and feel free to answer this question, either of you. How do you see the role of community engagement and data-driven economic research in empowering residents and building capacity in rural areas? And can you provide insights into specific ways in which residents can be involved in addressing challenges in rural communities?
Yeah, it's easy. No, I'm kidding. It's not. Well, I mean, I guess I would say that I think that any good community engagement process should also be empowering and build capacity. So Dr. Margaret Stout is on here, and I will probably reference work that her and I have done multiple times because she's a colleague and a mentor, and I've learned a lot from her about what this looks like, and just the importance of centering our work in a place and anchoring it there, right? Because that provides you the assets, the human assets, the built environmental assets, the social assets, the financial assets that communities are going to be using to do this work. And really, again, I think if we're doing our work correctly, we're catalyzing what's there. We're helping, show them that they have what they need in order to do this work. And then the process that we're doing is guiding them through seeing what they have, seeing who they have, and kind of helping to teach them how to do this, and also using that teaching as a learning opportunity for us, right? I mean, we bring technical experience, we bring theoretical lenses that they're not going to be familiar with, most likely. We're bringing best practices that we've learned from our work in other places and research that other people have done. But at the end of the day, they're the experts on what's there in the community. So again, it's just how can we help them activate that?
I would agree wholeheartedly. Getting the community engaged in different levels is really important when you're doing this. And well, I guess when we go in and work with communities, one question we always ask us is like, who is the community? Let's define the community first, and making sure that, we are including everyone within the community. Sometimes for us, it's communities of place, and sometimes it is like communities of practice. So like if we are working with a community around a particular industry, and who is involved in developing that industry. So really kind of defining that community, and then understanding, yes, we have some technical expertise. We can bring a lot of data. And when I say data, I say, here's a lot of secondary data. Here's a lot of socioeconomic data, theories and frameworks. But we also try to work with the community to help make their own understanding and experience into data. So understanding like what is the larger community saying about this phenomenon or this activity, and turning that into data. So you're really having a lot of kind of this broader socioeconomic data speak with what the community is experiencing, and in that way, like the community itself is really kind of creating the story. They are getting to really understand what is going on in their community and how they can approach moving forward with it. And it really is all about kind of that co-creation. It gives people the power to really be able to tell their story, talk about here's what's going on and this is why we need this, and here are the assets that we bring to the table to move forward with whatever community or economic development activity we wish to do. And I think that's, as Daniel said, the ability of empowerment is really important to that. And that's really the role of any community or economic developer.
Yeah.
Well, I think Sarah's, use of the word stories, that's what I always say I do, right? Is that I'm just helping communities tell a story. And, if you think about when you were in high school and everything, and you would write your little outline and all that. For me, I just see numbers as an outline that the community can then take, and we can help craft that story about where they've been, where they are, and where they want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's incredible. It sounds like from both of you, the approach that you've taken is to really go in and ask a bunch of questions, right, and figure out who this group is, who your community is, and then how to take what they're doing and just sprinkle a little bit on top, right? And it's great for me as like a learner of community development, new in the field and trying to grow and learn, to just continue to remember to ask those questions, right? Figure out what the community needs and how we can take those resources that we have at our disposal, and kind of put them on top of the work that's being done. So thanks for sharing all that. It sounds like you all have some experiences too in this space. And so my question for you is, my next question is, would you share an example of a community engagement project that you've been involved in that had a significant impact on the rural community in either West Virginia or Virginia? And then if you could explain what some of those key strategies were, and then some of the outcomes of that project.
You want to go first, Daniel?
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, this is another one where I'm gonna reference Margaret Stout here. One of the projects that we've been working on. We always joke that this actually started before I even took my job. We were working in Montgomery the weekend before I actually got hired. But we've been working on community engagement activities through my role in extension and Margaret's role in the public administration program. And Margaret put together a course set that went over. It's now 3. It was originally 4 semesters, where students were engaged with a community, and extension, kind of played that bridge between the university resources and the community resources, like a good extension project should. But what I think was really important about that was that it was deep engagement, right? So often when we do this work, at least speaking for myself, it's not a lot of capacity and a whole lot of folks that need our assistance, right? So we frequently kind of parachute in, do our work, and then go on to the next place, which is good. It's people need help, and it's good to be able to go in and help, but again, doesn't really build that capacity. And I think what was really important about the Moving Ahead Together program was that it brought students in, and as they were learning through their coursework, the community was also learning. Right. So the skills that the students were gaining were being implemented with the community, so that the community was gaining that knowledge. And again, it followed this really great process where we started with let's develop the community profile, and let's look at the assets that are in the community. Let's pair that with storytelling circles and getting this qualitative information from the community about what's important. Let's engage the community in participatory planning activities. And then at the end, they were left with actual robust documents that could be used for grant writing, right? These were well-formed action plans based on 3 or 4 projects that, again, based on assets, based on community desires that the community could take and run with. And I think the one that I was probably most intimately involved with from start to finish was in Fairmont. And that one was really powerful. We saw, again, the community actually writing grants and getting funding for projects. We saw folks running for public office who certainly wouldn't have done that before. And just engagement by residents who I would say we're probably not your usual suspects for community engagement in the project. And I think a lot of that was because, you know, they just hadn't been asked. And this project focused on a single neighborhood and really emphasized getting all of those voices and folks together to do this work collectively. And I think it was really, really powerful.
Great example. I would say, so yeah, I guess in our office, we do, yeah, we have various student projects. We also have kind of more of a consulting hat. So we do kind of like, it's a double-edged sword, kind of flying in, helping a community and then flying out, which it's always a little sad, because then you're like, okay, you try to keep up with the community, see, okay, so what happened, what came out of these projects in the end, and in the end, it's really the community that's doing it, and we like played a very, 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 very minuscule part in helping them think through some things at the very beginning. So for instance, I would say several years ago, we worked in 2 communities on different food projects. So one was in Roanoke, and there was Leap Community Kitchen that was in which is in a neighborhood that was economically disadvantaged. And the idea of the community kitchen was how do we help kind of with some of the community development of it? How do we help engage a lot of the citizens in the community so they can have more healthy food? And be able to and also engage in workforce programming around, you know, how do you start to run your own food business? So our work really was right at the get-go is doing a feasibility study for them, and saying, and, you know, talking with the community around them, talking about with the folks who could potentially contribute and provide assets to this potential community kitchen. And I guess we like to say in our office is like with the feasibility study, it's usually a yes and or a no but. So yes, this is feasible and this is the way to approach it. So you potentially get the biggest impact moving forward. Or no, not so feasible, but you could do this instead and it would make a lot more sense for your community. With that, I mean, you have this Leap Community Kitchen in Roanoke that it's up and running, and it's highly engaged in the community, which is wonderful. I think particularly for that neighborhood, which was adjacent to a very affluent neighborhood, it's helped prevent some gentrification in some ways, or at least has slowed that down to some extent, where you have people who are living in the community still there. While there is a lot of development going on, but positive development, but not positive development that kicks people out of their communities. Then you see the town of Hillsville, which is in Southwest Virginia. They were actually looking at doing again their own farmers market. And again, it was kind of a feasibility study. And so going in and trying to help them figure out, okay, if you wanted to do a farmer's market, how would you do it? How would it work out? And they were particularly interested in making sure that people from all over the community, all socioeconomic demographics, could really engage in this farmer's market. And so talking about like, okay, what are the transportation networks that could help people who, you know, normally don't have cars or don't always have access to cars reach this farmer's market? How do you integrate different spending options and opportunities, and how do you engage? And then on the farmer side, how do you engage different kinds of farmers so you have a wide variety of products at that farmer's market so people can really basically do their shopping there? So again, the farmers markets kind of up and running now. I think they have it's from what the town manager tells me is really popular, so that's great, and brings in a lot of different folks. So yeah, I would say both of those are would be one of those aspects where, you know, we got to actually say yes and which made me happy. It's harder when you have to tell people no, but yeah, so
yeah. Well, that's incredible. I think that what I see happening here is figuring out how to understand the problem, right? And through feasibility study, through gathering data, understanding the problem, and then figuring out a way to present that to a community in a way that, you know, has a yes and or a no but, has this level of optimism and kind of solution thinking. And it sounds like you leveraged a bunch of tools and a bunch of strategies to do that in the past. And it's been mentioned a few times how data has played a role in that process. And so my question for you, and maybe we'll start with Sarah, given your expertise in community data analysis, what are some key data-driven approaches that have been particularly effective in guiding economic development decisions and supporting local planning and placemaking in rural areas?
Different data approaches. I would say, so like, yeah, looking at feasibility studies, looking at impact analyses, I mean, they're standby tools, but they're tools that, you know, that are respected, that can also, I think what Daniel had said earlier was it not only helps working with the community, it not only helps to build their capacity and be able to tell their story, but it gives them the tools for like future funding. So whatever they do in the future, they can do grant funding. They can, they can take steps towards the right, towards hopefully future positive development. I would say both with feasibility studies and impact studies. I think we do try to approach it in a very kind of engaged way, where we're hopefully building the capacity of the community members to say, okay, who in this group, who are the champions and of these different activities that would make this project feasible. Or when looking at an impact analysis, often people love, people get an impact analysis so they can have the big number and they can say, hey, look, we have this much impact. But the really cool part of an economic impact analysis is really getting to not only just that dollar number, but understanding what are these broader impacts and how do we tell the story of a quantitative and a qualitative in a qualitative and a quantitative way. And then how do we create those causal linkages to understand why that impact is the way it is? Once you understand like why the impact is actually happening, you can start strategizing and thinking about, okay, how can we increase our impact moving forward? How can whatever we're doing now, how can this improve the community even further? So what are things that could, what things can we do that could bring more people to the community if it's something for tourism, or that can better support different businesses across within the community? A lot of different strategies and aspects that can come out of that impact analysis that not everyone really necessarily thinks about.
Yeah.
I hope that was answering your question.
Great. Daniel, how have you used data?
Yeah, well, I'm going to get back to Sarah's piece with the impact, because I think that's great, and I've got a cool story about that. But yeah, so I mean, I would say broadly, like, I mean, we can use it to challenge assumptions and then also show that potential. So as far as challenging assumptions, Sarah, I don't know if you know Mel Jones at the Virginia Center for.
Yes, I love Mel. Yeah, we work together, so yeah, a lot.
Yeah, so Mel and I have been working together a lot as well, because housing's a huge issue in rural areas all over the place, and urban places too. But that was capacity that we didn't necessarily have here in the state. So we've been working with the Virginia Center for Housing Research to kind of build that out. And one of the things that I have found to be incredibly impactful, we do just a simple graph that has the top 10 occupations in the county, in the region, wherever we're working, and what they can afford for housing versus housing costs, right? Because so often when we talk about affordable housing, people immediately think low income housing, right? And when you can show people, well, hey, look, 25%, that's usually what it works out to. The top 10 occupations usually are about a quarter of the occupations in a region that we're working in. When you can show them that, hey, only 3 of the workers in only 3 of these top 10 occupations can afford to own a home in your community, right? That really drives the point home, right? We're not talking about people sitting on the couch here. We're talking about people who are out working multiple jobs and still can't afford a home. So I think that's really important. That's I think a great example of how we can use data to push back on people and their assumptions. But I think Sarah's talking about the impact analysis, and I think using that to show potential is huge. We've done a lot of work looking at the economic impacts from mountain biking activities in the state, and partnerships with Snowshoe, the Pocahontas County CVB, the Forest Service, state parks, and industry groups like IMBA, the International Mountain Biking Association, I mean, have been really, really powerful. And those partnerships and those relationships, coupled with economic impact numbers that we've been generating here, that's what got Snowshoe the bronze ride center, and now they've gone up to silver level. I was looking at, I had a slide pulled up here that we had used for some stuff. I mean, they've pulled in $1 million from state money for trail development in the county, $250,000 planning grants from IMBA, and then this gets to Sarah's point about thinking about, like, if we understand what those impact analyses are doing and how it works, right? There was this recognition that we also need activities off Snowshoe Mountain, right? Like, how can we disperse those activities throughout the county and through other, these smaller communities like Marlinton? And they got a $1.5 million ARC power grant to do that. And every one of those pieces had our numbers in it. So I'm like super excited about that. And I think it also showcases, right, that the power of that, when you can show people, hey, this is what we could do, right? That becomes a really, really important tool, and an inspiring tool for the community, and an inspiring tool to get to leverage funding. So
yeah, that's amazing. I think that like you said at the beginning, storytelling, giving people content, right? Giving people a story to tell and helping to shape that through observation and data, and tying that in is really the way to help maximize impact, right? Both of you, I would say, are experts in this space of socioeconomic impact analysis. But could you describe for me a situation where you saw an innovative or surprising approach to gauging and articulating the impacts of an initiative? And then another part of that question is, how do you think that universities and their partners can use these insights to drive positive change in our communities?
Sarah, you want to take that one?
I can try.
Yeah,
That's a hard question. Again, I would say when we're kind of trying to show our socioeconomic impacts, part of the question is how do you tell the full story, not just that number? Because a traditional economic impact analysis, is very, 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 very narrow. For instance, we've been working with some nonprofits that are up in the Northern Virginia area that run basically they run a federal program called the Ability One program that hires people with disabilities for federal jobs. And so these nonprofits basically help facilitate the hiring and support of people with disabilities in different jobs, like different custodial, gardening sort of jobs across the federal government. And they wanted to kind of understand what their impact is, and how do you really think about impact when you're looking at when you're thinking of a very social program where more and more you see politicians saying, oh yeah, this is all warm and fuzzy, but brass tacks, what does this mean? And couldn't the market basically do a better job? So when approaching that, we were really looking at, okay, so there have to be a lot of multifaceted approaches to understanding impact. So one, what is the government saving by, helping people have employment? The sheer fact that they are off all of these services. what happens when you empower these people with employment? And so they have money in their hands. They are working, they're interacting with different community members, which overall leads to greater social integrity, and sustainability, and basically acceptance throughout one's community. And what is, and then, particularly, and then what happens to not only, the individuals that are in part of that program, but the individuals related to the previous caretakers who normally, had to stay with them. Now they can have the ability for a job, which in a tight labor market, we know is a wonderful thing. More people in the labor force is very wonderful right now. And for what does this mean for the larger community? Does it mean does it mean that we have a broader, more accepting community in the future when we see people who are different from ourselves in these jobs every day? So thinking about really trying to tell those stories, again, it's a combination of kind of the quantitative, how do we quantitate as much of this as possible? And sometimes you end up using various proxies, proxy metrics, but then also just talking about it in a qualitative way. What are the individual stories that are emblematic of kind of a larger story about a program or about a project? So I would say that's the approach we're taking right now. I don't know how innovative it is, but I'm trying to do our best.
So I mean, I was going to say the exact same thing, actually. I think the work that Scott Chasden and Mary Emery, the ripple effect mapping, right? Like where you can go in and, because often I think we come in based on, if we're doing evaluation work, right? Or, we know what outcomes this program was supposed to achieve, right? So we want to see, did it in fact meet that? But what often happens, right, is that you've got these things that you didn't even expect to happen revealing themselves in the community. I mean, we did some work for a CDC high obesity prevention grant. And it was awesome, right? I mean, we could show changes to the built environment and examples of people increasing physical activity, but it was super powerful when you had a woman who was, a doctor at a clinic saying, oh, there were folks in the community, it's like Clay County, right? Really small community. There were folks in the community I'd never really worked with before. And now we're doing these other projects together, right? And that's the kind of stuff, these spillovers and things that you didn't expect to happen, I think is really, really awesome to see. So yeah, I think, again, like Sarah said, trying to find those stories that go along with the data and just enrich what we're able to measure quantitatively. It's cool.
Yeah. And also you talk about the ripple effects, like talking about, and I know people are doing this more and more, and I want to get better at this, but the whole idea of like understanding the social, like a social network analysis and understanding how a particular intervention can bring partners closer together and what are the effects of that. What are the impacts of new relationships on a community? I think that's such a neat tool that hasn't been used fully yet, that I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do.
Yeah, one of the more funny examples that I can think of from one of our teammates, Andy Williamson, he talks about the economic change that happened in Western North Carolina around Asheville over the past 20 years and investing in outdoor recreation. He talked about the correlation between how many bike racks you see visibly in your city and the outdoor economy's vitality. And I thought that was a really interesting connection to be made there. And so to follow that up, I think a lot of times folks are looking for like a goal or to put definitions behind some of these things. But when it comes to community vitality, what key factors do you think contribute to that in a rural setting? And then how can these factors be leveraged for sustainable development?
There we go.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, right. So vitality, right, is one of those wonky things. Like what does that mean, right? It's like sustainability or quality of life. Like what do any of these things actually mean? But I will say, I think we do know what they mean, right? I mean, again, I value those asset-based frameworks, whether it's a USDA wealth model or the Flores community capitals model, or again, the work that Dr. Stout's doing with Mark Roseland through more traditional sustainability lenses. I think as long as it centers and anchors on a place, and anchors on the people who are going to be there doing the work and living the outcomes, and takes a holistic approach to the assets that are there. I think that's what's important. I think when we can put all of those things together, that's when we can really affect change. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
yeah, no, to build off kind of like, what is vitality? I mean, vitality can be very different for every community. I'll say, and particularly as we're talking about like ripple effects, I'm a huge fan of input of logic models. I don't know if anyone else is, but understanding kind of like, what are our assets, what are our inputs, and then the initial activities and the outputs of those activities and the outcomes. I would say that larger impact and that larger outcome, and those larger outcomes, again, take a lot of different forms for different communities. But I would say probably some of the key like inputs or activities that really probably need to be necessary to get to something that a community member could define as vitality is really how's the engagement between government, business, community groups, services working? Is this engagement being inclusive? Is it probably hopefully multinodal, where you have different groups working together but also working within themselves to do a lot of different activity that is community focused? And getting to kind of the sustainability of it, are some of these activities really engaging youth? I would say some of the most vibrant communities are the ones where they've been able to really engage youth, so youth can understand kind of the importance and kind of gain a love of their own community. So you have that kind of longevity moving forward.
Yeah.
We've got a really great program that we've been rolling out. We got some Extension Foundation funding to kind of expand it. It's called My Hometown is Cool. It started out as a 4-H lesson. Again, just looking at, I don't think it wasn't grounded in deep theory necessarily, but that's what it was. It was like looking at community assets and trying to get youth to be excited about what's there. And we tried to make it a little bit more robust. And it's been rolled out with, oh my gosh, I think something like 800 different students across the state. And it's been really awesome because we're through program evaluation, right? We've seen positive change in civic engagement with the youth that have participated. And it's been great. So I agree with Sarah. I think youth engagement is really powerful. And I mean, anything, it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be participatory, and it's really got to empower the people who are living and working and doing the community development. I mean, we can bring our expertise and our help to the situation. But again, as Dr. Stout has taught me, it's got to be doing work with and not for or to a community. So
agreed. Yeah. One group that I'm sure several of you probably already know, but Apple Shop that are in Whitesburg, Kentucky, they do some amazing engagement with their community that has really I've done some work with them recently, but also in the past, where I'm talking with alumni who have gone through a lot of their different programs, particularly with youth and the community. So they go by kind of like a community cultural development platform, where it's really, how do we basically how culture can move economic impact, can move economic development in many ways. But working with youth and having youth really start to tell the story about their own communities, they gain so much appreciation for where they live. And there are so many people, alumni that I've talked to coming out of those programs that have basically been like, I figured I would just be leaving this region when I grew up, and I would probably go to college and never come back. But people do come back. People stay, and they really they've learned to like appreciate and want to work for their community and grow their rural regions. And I think that's incredibly important. For understanding the love of of your history, but also of what could potentially be.
Yeah, I was on a similar path as many young people, and thinking I didn't have a place here in West Virginia. And for me, it was outdoor recreation that created that sense of connection with this place, and helped me to feel like, oh, there is vibrancy here, right? There is something worth advocating for and being involved in. And I fell in love with Appalachia, with West Virginia, and I'm glad that I ended up making my way back here. And I think you guys spoke to something that's really powerful, the ability to affect change by empowering our youth. And in Virginia and West Virginia, I think our youth are really important. And in this work of economic development, you're always waiting to potentially see your impacts maybe 20 years down the road or beyond your professional career. Youth and our kids and our next generation are really a great way to see that come to fruition. So I'm glad that you guys mentioned that. Sarah, I have a question for you, and for me, this is also a very warm spot for my heart, thinking about international work and the experiences that we've had overseas. For you and your background, you've obviously had a chance to do that, and I'm curious if in your work you could share any cross-cultural examples where strategies for community and economic development either were very similar or very different, and then if there was any insights that you gained from that experience.
Yeah, I had the privilege of being in Peace Corps for 2 years in Northwest Africa and Niger. So that was really mind-blowing in many ways. I learned a whole lot. I think some of the things that I brought back with me and that my work here has just built on is it really is all about community context. It really is about, how do you meet people where they are, where they are culturally, where they are, within their community and what their daily lives are. So I would say, and I think we're learning this more and more, so when we wanted to particularly engage people who are like maybe hard to reach populations, how do we best do that, and how do we best engage them? In Niger, it was very much when I would work with women's groups, oftentimes I would be coming to their groups at 9 o'clock at night, when really normally my bedtime, but that's when they're done with their work, and they get to come together and chat and kind of and have fun and be social with each other. So let's meet at that time. Let's talk, and let's integrate kind of this social hour with let's start strategically thinking about what we could do as a group to be more entrepreneurial or grow grow our opportunities.
Yeah.
And I would say the same is for now. The same is for here. I mean, what are the populations that we really want to reach, and how best do we reach them? Where are they? And how do we engage in a conscientious way?
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think what you mentioned about context is really important, and I think about that a lot. And the work that we're doing in West Virginia is how do you how do you better understand the environment that you're working in, and the history and the heritage and what brought people to now. I think that really helps to figure out how to guide people to what's next. Yeah.
And it also takes down like those political barriers too, like all of the stupid stuff that like really just gets in the way sometimes of like actual progress. It like just learning about people. That's what I mean, Daniel, you had mentioned storytelling before. Just really telling your story. I mean, that helps to pull down barriers and get at the context, get at the understanding.
Yeah. Well, I think we have time for one last question, and I think that this one might help leave us with some tools as we part ways. Obviously, one of the important roles that we play is facilitating vision and strategy and helping people to take this data or this research or these impact statements that we're working on, or at the beginning when we're creating them, and facilitating those discussions, facilitating those meetings. What advice would you offer to universities and other collaborators in effectively engaging community partners? And then are there any like tools or methodologies that you found particularly valuable in this context?
Go first, Daniel.
Well, I mean, I think like Sarah said, I mean, I think you gotta meet people where they are and be aware of the culture and cultures in which you are working, even if it, even in rural West Virginia, right? I mean, we do have different pockets, and people are not all the same.
Yeah.
We got the 55 West Virginias, right? 55 different counties and 55 different West Virginias. So I think that's part of it. I think thinking about power dynamics, and like, Sarah talked about the, getting to know people, right? And it's not just this like government type thing. I mean, and also, Sarah, you mentioned like, just those different governance actors, right? It's businesses, nonprofits. It's not just the government, right? It's all these different folks that are doing work. And I think being aware of who the actual gatekeepers are and who holds power in a community, because oftentimes it is not elected folks, right? It's, you may have to get in with the old boys drinking coffee at 5 a.m. at McDonald's.
Yep.
Right? They may be the ones who actually help you get things done, right? Or the sewing circle, or whoever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But then I just think, I don't know about specific tools. I could probably dig some up, but I think for me, it's those asset-based frameworks, it's participatory frameworks, and it's systems thinking.
Yeah.
And those, sustainability frameworks broadly, right? That account for all of the assets and resources that a community can leverage to get things done.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, yeah, well said. I think the only thing I would add to that, which I mean, you pretty much already said, but listening, just lots and lots of listening and keeping a very open mind about, what's going on in the community and what are the possibilities, and that sort of thing. Cause, I mean, yeah, every community is different and everyone has expertise, and we have to, anytime we approach a community, we have to be humble about what we can do and what, how we work with folks. So.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate your candor and your intentionality and giving us these insights and sharing a little bit into your experience. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time and for sharing your professional expertise. This was such an impactful conversation, so thank you very much. Again, folks who are here, I see all the chat. We'll be sharing all of this with everyone through email, including the recording. We wish you all a wonderful evening. Have a good day. Thanks.
Thanks.